In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. My brothers and sisters, tonight we have a very happy night. We speak about wonderful things like marriage and children and discipline, and the huge problem of building a loving home in a difficult materialistic society. And tonight I'm so reminded of a time when I was speaking in Red Deer, this same topic. I was speaking there and I didn't know about the PA system, how it was working. And I said, "Can you hear me at the back? Can you hear me at the back?" And a fellow stood up at the back and he said, "No, but it doesn't matter." Imagine. Another fellow, they knew me well, another fellow stood up in front and he turned around and he said, "Well, I can, and I'll trade places with you." So, it's funny what friends will do to you at times. And tonight, when we speak of home and family, we have to really, really pray hard for our homes and our family, because the home is the domestic church. The home is a cell in the church and in the community. Our church will never ever be stronger or better than our families. And our country will never be better or stronger than our homes. The homes, the families, are like the pillars that hold up our country and our church. There is nothing more important in our community than our families. And so often our poor families get so neglected. Now there's a tremendously difficult recipe to make a home. It's not easy to make a home. It's extremely difficult to get a family together, a loving family, when our society is so busy and so materialistic. It takes nearly a miracle of grace today to make a home and to keep it together. So the first thing we must do to build a home is we have to pray. We can't do it alone. We need God's special help. We need prayer. So in a home we have to pray. Father Patrick Peyton used to always say, "The family that prays together stays together." And there's a lot of truth in that prayer is the most important ingredient in building a home and keeping that home together. But simply prayer is not enough. God expects us to do our bit. And besides prayer, we have to sacrifice. We have to learn to do things that are difficult. And here in our society, we have a huge, huge problem. We only educate about half of the person. And I have to explain that to you. We only educate and develop about half of the person in our society. If you look at a human being, we have a soul. A most precious part of us, the soul, that's where you live. And we have to develop a spiritual life. We have to have a faith, a religion. We have to recognize that we have a God. We have to learn how to pray. So we have a spiritual life. And then, secondly, we have a body. So we have to have a physical life. We have to take care of our health. We have to exercise. We have to go jogging. We have to watch cholesterol and all these wonderful things that we have to watch to have a healthy body. See? And then we have a mind. So we have to have an intellectual, academic development. In other words, we have to go to school. We have to learn not only our religion, but we have to learn about our whole world, our geography, our politics, and everything that's happening around us. But then we have feelings. We have such wonderful, powerful feelings. So we have to have an emotional, social development. Notice there are 4 dimensions to a human being. There's a spiritual side, a physical side, an intellectual side, and finally an emotional, social side to us. But there's only one of us, and these four dimensions are interacting all the time, all the time. And we have to be aware of that. In the Middle Ages, life was totally the opposite. They only worried about the spiritual life. They learned to pray, build cathedrals, and the whole human life at that time centered around the church. So they had a powerful, powerful spiritual development. And they also had strong emotional, social development because the families were strong and solid. They lived together for years and years. A son would always go and work in the fields with his father, or they would work together to build the church or the cathedral, always together. And the families did not move. They would stay together for centuries. A grandfather would start building a church. The father would continue, the son would continue, and the grandson would continue, sometimes on the same project for 150, 200 years. You notice how they really developed their spiritual life, and they had a strong emotional life. But they totally neglected the academic, intellectual life. They didn't go to school. Only some of the clergy learned to read and write. So there was not much of an intellectual development. They didn't worry about physical development. They neglected the body. They didn't have a good health system like we have with all our modern medication and technology. They had nothing like that. So they would die of old age at 35, you see. But they developed half of the person. What are we doing in our modern world? We are neglecting the spiritual, very, very much so. Remember, only 20% of Canadians go to a place of worship on Sunday. So we're neglecting our spiritual life very badly. And we're neglecting our emotional, social life. Our children are not very strong emotionally. In working with families, I've seen a tremendous decline where youngsters don't mature as fast as they used to. They're always weaker. They can't take as much stress. They just don't grow up as well. So today, we're very, very strong intellectually. Oh, wow! Do we ever stuff the head? It's amazing. Today, we try to see how much stuff we can stuff in that little head in the shortest possible time. Where 100 years ago when I was a kid, it was different. Like elementary school was a breeze. I never had any homework in elementary school. Nothing. In grade 1, we would put on plays, and we would catch gophers, climb trees, swim in the river. Sometimes the teacher couldn't teach us because we were all outside. She couldn't find us. You know, we played so much, we fooled around so much, would you believe our teacher would generally burn out by Christmas. New Year's was wonderful. We always had a new teacher. But we had one man who stuck it out from September till June. But he was an alcoholic, otherwise he wouldn't have made it, I'm sure. Because we were so bad, and we didn't worry much about our education. We were too busy catching gophers and eating the gum off the spruce trees and swimming in the river. We had a wonderful time. Oh, the 2 happiest years of my life I spent in grade 1. It was really, really nice, you know. But today I have 6 university degrees, so it didn't hurt us a whole lot, you know. We still did all right. But today, wow, elementary school is a serious academic endeavor. Wow, they get homework. It's amazing. 1.5 hours, 2 hours of homework. Some of these poor kids, they come home from school. They have to go to work and the homework. And then besides that, as if that wouldn't be good enough, we have to take them to karate lessons, swimming lessons, ballet lessons, piano lessons, and mother runs a taxi between the lessons, back and forth. It's amazing. We get so busy chasing around the lessons that we can't even eat together as a family. The home becomes something like a self-service filling station where you tank up and you ship out, and you keep going. We're so busy, we can't be together. Oh, do we ever stuff heads nowadays? Oh, my. Today, if you want to succeed in grade 1, You have to have a strong kindergarten. You have to go to a kindergarten that has some academics, that you learn to read a little bit. See, imagine in kindergarten. I have some poor mothers who come to me and say, can you help my boy? He can't read. He can't read. I say, what grade is he in? Kindergarten. I say, he's not supposed to read. He's too little. He should be playing. He should be fooling around. He should be playing for fun. But we stuff their heads. In fact, kindergarten is becoming such a powerful academic endeavor that now you have to have pre-kindergarten or preschool to prepare you for kindergarten. Otherwise, you'll flunk out. You haven't got a chance. You know, before too long, I wouldn't be surprised if we go way back and have education in the womb. If we could get the jump on Alberta, it would be wonderful, you know. Oh, dear. Do we ever stuff those little heads? It's amazing. And we have this illusion that if we stuff enough ideas in that little head, that child will be successful and happy, have a good job and a good marriage. That isn't true. You know, stuffing the head isn't sufficient. We have to have emotional development, and we have to have spiritual development. But we really do a good job stuffing the head. And do we ever take care of the body nowadays? Did you notice that? You'd never tell by looking at me. But we really do take care of the body well. A lot of people go jogging every day. They go to the gym and exercise to become stronger and stronger. And they lift weights and they exercise every muscle in the body. And when we eat, what a complicated endeavor. My goodness, you nearly have to, you know, you have to join Nutrisystem or something to eat properly today because it's so complicated. You have to watch calories, cholesterol. You have to check the vitamins and the minerals. You nearly have to eat with a calculator, you know. In the old days, we just stuffed it down. We never worried much about it, you know. But now, it's a very, very, and it's beautiful to look after the body. We are supposed to. The fifth commandment will tell us, thou shalt not kill, and it presupposes that we look after our body. But we're preoccupied with the body. It's unbelievable. Did you ever watch, what's the biggest thing in our lives? It's the Olympics, or the NHL, or the football, but it's always the body. And when young people date nowadays, you know, in the old days, we were so old-fashioned. We will look for inner qualities. So when a young man and a young woman were dating together, you would try to find out, does this person have any morality? Do they have any conscience? Are they able to work? Are they affectionate? How do they treat their mother? Or how do they treat their brothers and sisters? And we would look for these inner qualities because we were worried about the whole person. If you're going to marry this person, we should know something about what's going on inside of them. Nowadays, we don't worry about that. Because of advertising, what are we preoccupied with? With external appearances. So when you're looking for a spouse for life, we look at silly things like the color of the hair, you see, and the length of the eyelashes. Now, if you have long eyelashes, that's really, really sexy. That can really help to bring happiness to a couple and to a home. We calculate the size of the breast. It's so important to keep this marriage together. And of course, the shape of the body has got to be sort of the shape of a Coke bottle, you know, 36, 24, 36. That's not metric. I don't know the metric system, but I'm sure it's similar. Oh my, are we obsessed with the body? And that stuff doesn't matter at all. You know, I've worked with families and couples all my life, and you know, to this day, I never ever had a marriage break up because the eyelashes were too short. Never. Never found a couple that broke up because the breasts were too small. Never. Isn't that amazing? We are so funny. We only look at externals, and they don't matter. Marriages always break up because of a lack of inner qualities by one or the other or both. Sometimes the people are too immature to get married. Working in psychology, I've had to test people to find out if dad would be the best person to keep the children or mother. We have tests we can tell how mature people are or immature. Sometimes we'll find people who are 30, 40 years old, but emotionally they're 3 to 4 years old. And mother is that way, and dad is that way. there's no way they can take care of children. A lot of people today are getting married, but they're too immature to get married. Their emotional development is too weak. And instead of having the controls and the capacity to sacrifice, the capacity to do without, to put up with, to do without, to give in and to give up, extremely important qualities to keep a marriage together. We don't look at that. And so many are getting married too young. They're too young emotionally. Physically, they mature much faster than we did 100 years ago, I'll tell you. They actually mature faster physically, and they're much brighter intellectually. But emotionally, so many are just poor little babies. They're so young yet. I'll show you how it works. It's quite simple. I'll teach you a short class in developmental psychology. When a baby is born, the baby is caught in its mind, much like an autistic child in a way. And it's as if they're trapped in their head. And mother, in the first 3-4 months of life, has to relate with that child. Mother has to talk to the child, sing to the child, cuddle the child, tickle the child, smile at the child, and establish a relationship with that child. And then they become one emotional blob, a big bowl of emotional jelly, so to speak. Whatever mom feels, the baby feels. Isn't that something? Mother feels depressed, the baby feels depressed. Mother feels happier, the baby feels happier. And the baby lays the foundation for the higher human feelings, feelings like empathy, compassion, guilt, conscience, and so on. Children who don't bond with their mother because mother cannot be available to them emotionally, she's too weak, or mother has to work too much and can't spend enough time with this child for the first 3 years. Some of these children don't bond very well. Some of them don't bond at all. And they don't have the higher human feelings later on. They have no empathy, no compassion, no guilt, no conscience. We call them sociopaths or psychopaths. But when the child is 4 or 5 years old, if they've bonded well with mom, they have good feelings, they have lots of feelings. But now they have to proceed, they have to grow. And that's where we need dad. Dad gives the socialization phase. You see, mother gives the first phase, which is the bonding, the symbiotic relationship. But dad socializes the child. It's as if dad has to take the child off of mother's knee and present the child to society and to the world. Unfortunately, many of our families today have no dad, you see. There's no dad. When we have no dad as a single mom, don't feel all guilty because you're a single mom, no. When it comes to the children, very often it's better to be a single mom than a fighting mom. Sometimes a marriage has to break up just to survive emotionally and psychologically. You can't do the impossible. So don't feel guilty that you're a single mom. My mom was a single mom, and we were 12 of us, and she managed, you see, but that wasn't easy. But you have to remember that a husband is a handy thing to have around. I know some of you women have wondered why we have these creatures. Well, especially for the boys. When the boys are 3-4 years old, it's good to have a dad around who can take the boy off of mother's knee and present him to society. They mature better. It helps even their language skills. It's amazing. They identify better with their dad, and they go through adolescence much easier when they have a good relationship with their dad. But sometimes in our permissive society, we don't set any structure to the children's lives. When they're little, we just let them do what they want. Now, when a child is from 3 months to 4 years old, they're totally self-centered, very selfish. It's me, I. Whatever baby wants, baby gets. I'm still fighting that whole phase, trying to get out of it. But it's not an easy thing. And how do we get out of it? Usually we identify with a dad, and then we have to practice doing things we don't like. Just like when we go to the gym, we don't just pick up the lightest weights. We start off with light weights, but we pick up heavier weights, and away we go. And with our children, they have to practice doing little things they don't like. And they have to practice doing without things that they really want. But we don't understand that. We don't worry about making them emotionally strong. They have to have emotional stamina, emotional horsepower. And for that, they have to learn to give in and give up. They have to learn to work for things and not expect them. Otherwise, they have a sense of entitlement. And it doesn't go away by itself. I find some teenagers who are 13, 14 years old, they have a sense of entitlement. They don't realize it, but at deep subconscious level, when you test them, you find out that they have unrealistic expectations. They expect mom and dad to provide them with constant happiness, entertainment, attention, 24 hours a day. Parents can't do that. You can't provide a person with perfect happiness, attention, 24 hours a day. No. And so they get very angry at the parents. Some children will say, Mom, I hate you, even when they're little. See? Because they're disappointed with mom and dad. They're very incompetent. They can't give me perfect pleasure. And who can? Did you ever imagine, as an adult, how often you have your own way? During a week, you're always doing things that you have to do for your job, for your family, for each other. But a child, when they're young and immature, they have the impression that they are the center of the universe, and we have to help them get over that. There has to be some basic training that can start right at 18 months. See? And a child bites the mother. You know, they bite mom. You don't have to phone the police or a social worker. Just bite them back. You don't have to draw blood. No. You don't have to bite hard, but just give them the little message that when you bite people, it hurts. So they start to become aware of others. And they need that so badly. We have to get our children into an emotional gym, a gymnasium, where they exercise to do things that are more difficult. So they learn to take out the garbage, learn to do the dishes, learn to help with the laundry, learn to clean the house. Some of them, honestly, I can't believe it. They do absolutely nothing at home. They don't. We'll have a 15, 16-year-old girl who doesn't cook, doesn't wash the dishes, doesn't clean the house, just like a princess. She's the center of the universe, and mom and dad have to look after her. Wow. No, that's no preparation for marriage. No, marriage preparation has to start when they're 2 years old. They have to start learning that they can't do their own thing all the time. They have to make sacrifices. They have to give up certain things. They just can't go on in life saying, whatever baby wants, baby gets right now. Doesn't work. So emotionally, we have to really do some work there. We have to work to help people to be more adults. And, oh, do we need discipline? Oh, there's no discipline. You know, people now are so afraid of child abuse because so many people have been accused of abusing children, even poor foster parents and own parents. Some doctors misdiagnose and they'll say this child was beaten by the parents. You know, we have to be very careful with that because now we have a big, big fear of any kind of discipline. I don't believe in strapping people, beating children, no. But there has to be a little discipline. Like a mother brought me a little boy. He was about 4 or 5 years old. And she said, he's out of control. I can't control him. And in no time, as we were talking, he started climbing my bookshelf. Here he was climbing the bookshelf. Mother didn't move. So I said, he's climbing the bookshelf. She says, I see that, yeah, he does that, yeah. And then I had to go and untangle him from my books and bring him down. And then guess what? He started climbing my plant. I have this nice big plant. He thought he was Tarzan or something. He started to climb. I said, oh my gosh, he's climbing the plant. She said, I see that, yeah. That's the way he is, you know. He's a sort of a plant climber, I suppose. And we don't want to tell him anything because it could inhibit him too much, you see. He could lose his creativity and all this sort of stuff. Oh my gosh, you know. And we have so many books on how to raise kids. Oh, it's amazing. And one doctor gets a very fancy idea and writes a book on it, then every parent in the country thinks, my gosh, that's my child. That's exactly it, you see. Oh, dear. You'd be amazed how many kids are just spoiled rotten, and there's no books on that. Nobody writes about it. It's not popular. We have to have a little bit of discipline, but it's not there. It's so sad. And what can we do about it? Well, let's have 3 little C's. I give you 3 little C's. Discipline has to be clear, it has to be consistent, and it has to be cool. Clear, consistent, and cool. So the discipline has to be very clear with children. They have to know exactly what the rules are and what the consequences are, always. Then it's got to be consistent. It has to always be the same. Whether mother or dad are doing it, it doesn't matter. And we should do it together as a team. But so often, good heavens, you know, parents take turns at this dirty job. Like sometimes dad will say, well, honey, you look after the kids, I'll bring home the bacon. He brings home the paycheck. But he doesn't discipline the children. That's not his territory. He has no jurisdiction there. So dad comes home at 5 o'clock. He plunks himself down in the living room. He reads the paper, watches television. He has 2 eyes. He can do that. Little Johnny starts pounding nails in the piano, let's say. Dad doesn't move. You know, he gets the nails wholesale. It's not a big deal, you know. And finally, it's disturbing to him, so he says, honey, could you come and see what your boy is doing? Imagine, he disowns him. He makes him an illegitimate child, you see. Oh, no, we have to do something. We have to do it together. But finally, mother gets fired. Dad says, obviously, you can't handle the kids. I'll take over. You keep your nose out of it. So now dad takes over the discipline. Mother's laid off. But unfortunately, dad is a traveling salesman. He's gone from Monday to Friday. And poor mother is alone with the kids. She has no jurisdiction. All she can do is take notes. So Sally has to get a licking for what she did on Tuesday. Little Tommy because he broke a window on Wednesday. And on and on and on. And finally, it's Friday, and Dad is coming home. Wow! Mom is all prepared. All the kids are lined up for him. Some even have their pants down. And little Susan gets a spanking for what she did on Tuesday, and little Johnny for what he did on Thursday. He doesn't remember. He says, what's this for, Dad? Well, it's when you did, oh, I got to go for it, Dad. You know, it's amazing. And the children don't learn to be good with such a silly system. They just learn that Dad is a mean old man who comes home once a week to beat us up, you see. We have to keep it simple and do it together. And, oh, with all due respect, mothers, you talk too much when you discipline. You talk too much, you explain, and you natter, and you beseech, and you preach. No, leave that to the clergy. Don't talk so much. You know, just tell them once, just once. Tell them, stop it. That's it. If they don't stop, then you have to take action. They're driving nails in the piano. Take away the hammer. Hide the nails. Do something. And if you don't know what to do when they're little, just take them and put them against a bare wall to sit in a chair. And if they're 4 years old, let them sit there for 4 minutes. If they're 5 years old, 5 minutes. That works pretty well. And if they yell and scream, you just hold them with your hands very gently. Let them holler and scream. And I would tell them, holler as long as you want. As soon as you're finished yelling, we'll start the stopwatch. See? But you have to have some consequences. And when all else fails, just pick them up and give them a little swat, you know, on that part of the anatomy which the Creator has especially prepared for that purpose. And for sitting, of course, you know. And you don't have to be cruel. You know, Elvis was right, don't be cruel. No, you don't have to be cruel, but you've got to do something. Just a little swat won't hurt them. Don't hit hard, but it gives a little message. And above all, don't say, go to your room. Oh, dear, we do that over and over again. The kid is misbehaving. We say, go to your room. So he goes to his room. He has television there, Nintendo, Lego. You know, it's like sending him to Disneyland. You know, he'll be twice as bad tomorrow so he can go back to his room. No, put him against the wall, you know, with absolutely nothing to do. Oh, and some poor mothers, when you have to discipline the child, you have to keep it cool. Don't be so emotional. I know if it's very upsetting for you, if you're very angry, take a walk, a cold shower, whatever you need. But keep it cool. Don't get over emotional. Some of you will give the little one a tap on the bum, and then you'll break down and cry. I should have never got married. Worse than that, some of you will say, you take after your dad. And the kids love it. You know, this is like a soap opera. They'll be twice as bad tomorrow to get a replay. Yeah. Oh, dear. So let's do our best to have some structure in the house and some discipline. Those kids need it, because to be an adult, you have to have some discipline. You have to have some controls, and you cannot always do what you want. And then we have to be very careful in that I made a new word. We professionalize sports too much. Oh, do we professionalize sports? It's amazing. You know, children, psychologically, children have to play for fun. Oh, they have to play for fun. But we're so organized. Everything is professional now. You have to, like in the old days when we wanted to go for a bicycle ride, it was easy. You just jumped on an old bike and you went for a ride. Oh, now it's different. You have to train for the Tour de France, you see. You should join, if you're going to get anywhere, you should join a cycling club. And you have to buy slippery clothes that don't catch the wind. And then you need a helmet and an $800 bicycle. You know, and $1,500 later, you actually go for a bike ride. It's amazing. It's too complicated. We should play for fun. You know, some nice little games to play with little children when they're 4 or 5 years old. They're too young for professional sports. No, just play with them one-on-one. Simple things like patty cake is fun. You can do that where there's good eye contact. You touch each other's hand. Wonderful games. Or puts one hand down, the child puts a hand down, and you keep pulling out the bottom hand and moving it to the top. Those are cute little games. Or with Dad, you can take 2 old hockey sticks and a tennis ball, and you can play hockey in the garage or the back alley. Those are wonderful games for children who are 5, 6 years old. But we have to professionalize it. Oh, dear. Those poor little kids, 5 years old, we try to make them professionals. We get professional coaches. We dress them up like NHL players. We get them up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to get down to the rink. And then they have to be all dressed up with all this heavy equipment. The poor kid can hardly walk yet. And here they are trying to skate, you see. Somebody passes him the puck. He's so young and immature, he's staring at a light. He misses the pass, you see. Oh, they're way too young. They have to play for fun. You've heard of Gordie Howe, I'm sure. Gordie Howe, what a wonderful person from Saskatchewan. So we're prejudiced towards him. My gosh, do you know that he never ever got up at 5:30 in the morning to play hockey? You can be sure of it. They would get up when they were finished sleeping. And they played, they didn't go to a rink. They went to a slough. Now, you poor city people are not familiar with a slough unless you're from Saskatchewan. A slough is nothing but a pond with dirty water. But this pond freezes in winter and it's covered by snow. They would take off the snow and they would play for fun, stick handling. Even without having teams, you would try to keep the puck away from everyone else and you learn to stick handle. They played on a slough, imagine. And they didn't have all this expensive equipment. Not at all. You know, for a stick, they would go down to the creek and they would take a willow branch that had a little bend to it and they would chop it a bit with the axe and they would make a stick out of it. That was it. And they didn't have to have all these expensive pads. Not at all. On the left foot, they would put the Eaton's catalog and they would tie it with sealer rings that Mum had left over from canning season. And then on the right foot, they put the Simpsons catalog. That's why we had the two companies at the time, so we could cover both legs, you see? And they didn't have all this expensive stuff. And imagine for a puck, they used a piece of frozen horse manure. Honestly, that was all over the prairies. I know it makes you laugh, you city people, but if you think back, it was no laughing matter. In those days, would you believe, they never ever got a good hockey player from Vancouver. Never ever from Victoria. Never. You know why? They couldn't freeze the puck. You see, my friends? Oh, dear. My friends, we have to let children play. They have to play, and we have to play with them for fun. A lot of parents don't know how to play anymore, so they don't know how to play with the children. I had a lady come to our clinic, and she would just read. She would read a book by herself, and I would say, play with him, play with him. No, she didn't know how to play. So I thought I would show her. So I took a pillow, and I told the child, I said, let's have a pillow fight, just for fun. And the rule is, I'll try not to hurt you, you try not to hurt me. We'll play just for fun. And the kid laughed, and he enjoyed it, and we were doing that. And I said, see, just play like that, play for fun. Then I left, I had to do other things. One of my staff went back after an hour and a half. She was still pounding the kid with a pillow. She could have caused brain damage, you know. She didn't realize when you play with children, you have to change the game every 2 minutes or so. You have to find a new game. But she didn't know how to play. Well, we have to play with the kids. And of course, our homes today, oh dear, our homes, our houses are not really made for children. I was so lucky in northern Saskatchewan. I was raised in actually a 3-story house, and the third story was a big attic, but we could play up there. There was lots of room. Wow. And did we have fun? We played and played. We would play softball right in the house. In winter even, we played all year round. We had a good team because we practiced all year like the Russians. We practiced in our house, you see. And we had a hockey team. Can you imagine? Our family, with a few of the neighbors, had a hockey team. And we had a rink on our farm. And my brothers would flood the ice, and we would play the towns around us. Every Sunday afternoon, there was a hockey game at Larry's farm. Every Sunday afternoon. We had in the afternoon because we had no lights. During the week, they would play in the towns because they had lights. But my mother often had 2 hockey teams in her kitchen Sunday afternoon. They would change in Mother's kitchen. It was a rather big kitchen, but you put 2 hockey teams in there. We only had a wooden floor in the kitchen, but by spring, the floor was worn out completely. This is a historical fact. They had to replace the floor in Mother's kitchen because it was worn out by the skates. Isn't that amazing? And quite often, she would invite the other hockey team for supper, for dinner. They would stay, so she'd feed all her kids and 2 hockey teams. Of course, other ladies would pitch in and help, but that's how we did it. But we had a wonderful time. We did all kinds of funny things. Like, for instance, during the war, my brother and I, we were intrigued with paratroopers. So what did we do? We noticed that our big white tomcat was extremely agile. So we put him into training as a paratrooper. It was all for the war effort, of course, and we were still little. So we would take him by his 4 legs, and then we would drop him, and he would flip around and land on his 4 feet. He was excellent at it. And we got lower and lower, and finally we could only go 2 inches off the ground. Whoop, he would flip around and land on his feet. Then we were ready. Basic training was over. We had the 3rd floor was the big attic, and there was a window up on top, and we put a stepladder there, and my mother had a chest of wonderful things from France, which we were never supposed to look at or play with. But we went through it, and we noticed there was a silk shawl. Wow, 1 meter by 1 meter would make an excellent parachute, you see. And so we tied it in the 4 corners, and we would take a little bite from the side. So we had 8 strings, and we folded it up nicely, put it on the back of the tomcat, and then we stole one of my sister's nylons, and we wrapped it around his tummy, so he had good support, and we tied all the strings to the stocking, see? And then one of us watched at the bottom in enemy territory to see what was happening, and the other one went up the ladder, and we would take the tomcat up from the 3rd floor, and we'd throw him out as high as we could, and he would drift down so beautifully. And the other one would pick him up, fix up the parachute, and bring him up again. It was great. The tomcat didn't seem to mind at all. He got quite used to it. But did we ever get into trouble? Once my mother was doing her sewing in the sewing room downstairs. She was looking out the window, and all of a sudden the tomcat went by. I tell you, the war was over. The parachute was confiscated. But did we ever have fun? Did we ever play a lot? But today, you know, I think back of all the noise we made at our house, but our house had doors and corridors, and you could barricade the noise in several areas, and Mother maintained her sanity. She died at 93, see? Imagine. And after she had a number of us, the doctors told her if she had another child, she would die. She should never have another child. But she had so much faith, very prayerful, amazing woman. She had 5 of us after that. And one of her great pleasures was to attend her doctor's funerals. She never missed one of those. She'd always go to their funerals. But my brothers and sisters, we had fun. We were allowed to play. We had room to play. But the typical modern house today, at least in Saskatchewan, isn't built for children at all. No, the typical house is the 4 or 5 level split. No doors, no corridors. Someone burps in the basement, you hear it on the 5th floor. See? Oh, dear. And the most beautiful, beautiful room in the house is the living room. That's still the case. Isn't that something? The living room. What a gorgeous room. What a shame nobody lives in it, you know? Isn't that something? And the most beautiful window in the house is the picture window. I love the picture window. It's the biggest window, and it's the lowest one. It's the only one the little kids can look out of. But oh no, we mustn't let them. They would get jam on the panes. They would make the drapes all yucky, so we can't let them in there. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if the Knights of Columbus, or possibly the CWL, would have a Mother of the Year award for Good Shepherd and Holy Cross and Star of the Sea? Mother of the Year award, and we would give it to the mother who has a tremendous amount of courage and fortitude, a woman who would have the courage to turn the kids loose in the living room. Imagine if you did it when you got home tonight, if you would take the children, say, "Come, children," and you would introduce them to the living room. You would say, "Children, this is the living room. Go ahead and live in it." Oh, they'd have a ball. They would swing from the drapes. They'd slide across the coffee table. They'd bounce on the sofa. They'd wreck the place. Oh, dear. They would wreck the place. But really, it wouldn't matter, mind you. When your friends would come over, some of them would be shocked. They would say, "Ye gods, what did you do to the living room?" And some of them would never, ever come back. Never. But they're not friends, really. They're furniture inspectors, you see. Send them to Sears, to the Brick. No. But if they're real, true friends, they won't mind sitting with you down behind the furnace and having a cup of tea. Now, I've been misquoted by the press. You know, the press has said, Father Larre believes in dirty houses. Once they even said, give him a home where the buffalo roam, and he'll be happy with that. No, not at all. I believe houses have to be clean enough to be healthy, but they have to be messy enough to be happy. We are too materialistic. In so many families, the house and the furniture is so much more important than the children. We're always kicking them out. As much as possible, get them a room to play and to do something. They need that. They need to play just for fun. But we're so materialistic. Oh, dear. Now, I've suggested to the people in Edmonton that we should build a monument in Edmonton to Canadian materialism. Now, not just for Alberta, but for all of Canada, because as Canadians, honestly, we are as materialistic as we can afford. But I chose Edmonton for the national site. Why? Because in Edmonton, on a little side street, there's a beautiful little Protestant church, and it has a neon sign. And the neon sign flashes, Jesus saves, Jesus saves, Jesus saves. And just across the street, there's a big Safeway store. It has a bigger sign, and the sign reads, Safeway saves you more. Imagine who has the better business, you see. Oh, my brothers and sisters, we had to laugh tonight and play, but we have to pray so hard for good homes and for good marriages. And we have to learn also to try to forgive one another in our homes and in our marriages. You remember that silly show, The Love Story? It bothered me because there wasn't much love in it. But it was called The Love Story, and it said, love never has to say, I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry, it does have to say, I'm sorry. And it has to do it over and over and over again. I know you can't keep a marriage together when you're both having a nervous breakdown and you can't handle it. But we have to do our level best to keep our marriages together. We have to pray hard. Jesus is the glue. Jesus is love. He brought us together, and we have to pray that he keeps us together. And when we're short of love, we have to go back to the source. Just like when we're short of electricity, we trace the wires that go back to the powerhouse or the hydro plant. When we're short of love, we have to check the wires that connect us to God, because God is love. And we have to check our prayer life and talk to God and beg him to help us, because we have to have such good homes. We need them so badly for each other and for our children. And we have to learn to say, I'm sorry when we do things wrong, when we hurt one another. I'm thinking here of this wonderful couple. They were in their, I don't know how old they were, but they had been married for 60 years. Can you imagine? Married for 60 years. I think anyone who's married for 60 years should get the Order of Canada, something special, because that is a huge accomplishment to stay married for 60 years. But you know how you manage that? You keep repairing your marriage. You fix it up. It's like an old car. I love old cars. And the service people say, get rid of that piece of junk. I say, but I love it. The motor's no good. Yeah, I know, the motor's not that good, but gosh, it has a beautiful radio. I love the radio in it. No, you see, we have to keep repairing our marriage as if it was an old car. We keep fixing it up, and we have to say sorry. So I'll never forget this couple. They invited me to speak at their 60th anniversary. I had to say grace, and then they asked me to say a few words. But before I left, I wanted to talk to them, because I've always worked with families and children. And I asked them, how did you do it? What is your secret? How did you stay together for 60 years? And the groom, the old man, told me. He said, before we got married, we talked to our parish priest. He called us into the rectory. He was a saintly old man. And he had a long talk with us. And first of all, he said, I need you to pray every day together. Never, ever go to sleep without praying together. Every day. And we did that. And secondly, he had an amazing exercise for us, which we thought was quite silly, but we did it. He said, every night I want you to do this, and you, the groom, you start tomorrow night, on the night of your wedding. And before you fall asleep, I need you to take your bride's beautiful face in your hands, look at her eyes, and say, my darling, if I hurt you in any way today, I'm sorry. And you, the bride, you take his face in your hands and say, if I hurt you in any way today, I'm sorry. And you do that every day. So Sunday night, you the bride, you do it first, then he does it. Monday night, you the groom, you do it first. And you keep switching back and forth for the rest of your life. But never, ever go to sleep without doing that little exercise. And the old groom told me, you know, I think it saved our marriage. One time we had a horrible, terrible fight. We were cursing and swearing at each other. It was terrible. We started even throwing things at each other. And so that night, we went to bed in silence. And I was wondering, should we still do it tonight? And finally, he took his old bride's face in his hands, and he said, my darling, I know I hurt you today, but whichever way I hurt you, I'm sorry. It was your fault, but it's my turn. I tell you that story so that you always remember to say, I'm sorry, and try to make up and patch up. And pray so hard for your marriage and for your children. And when your children fall away from the church, if they stop going to Mass, stop having their children baptized and so on, please don't fight with them, don't argue with them. It's not what our Lord would do. But pray for them and sacrifice for them, give them good example, and keep visiting them and have them visit you at home, and love them to bits. Really, really love them and care for them. Show them how much you love them, and it'll make it easier for them to believe that Jesus really loves them, and Jesus wants them to come home. Some may come home on their deathbed, some may come home next year or 15 years from now, but keep praying for them. And tonight, my brothers and sisters, I want you to really think of your mothers. You people had a wonderful mother. I guarantee you, most of you had a tremendous mother, or you wouldn't be here tonight. When we're really loved by our mother, by our dad, it makes it so much easier to believe that God loves us, that Jesus cares for us. So you had a good mother. So let's thank God tonight for all our mothers, even if our mothers had faults, even if they neglected us, even if they had problems of their own. We have to thank God for our mothers. They gave us life. They brought us here. And we have to think of our Blessed Mother, Mary. Ask her to protect our marriage, protect our homes, protect all the families in White Rock and Surrey and all of British Columbia and the world. We really need help to protect our families from the forces of the diabolical, to bring them close to Jesus. And tonight, let's think of our mothers, and I'll sing you a little song about our mothers. And it spells the word mother, M-O-T-H-E-R.